You left the porch light on again. Do you have any idea what that does to the hydro bill? She said it before she even had her coat off. 7:43 in the morning, a Tuesday in November, and my mother-in-law was already standing in my kitchen in Mississauga, Ontario, holding a reusable bag from Loblaws like she'd been invited. My name is Lily Hargrove. I've been married to my husband for 4 years, and for 3 of those 4 years, his mother has treated our house like a second property she forgot to tell us she owned. She doesn't call ahead. She used to, in the very beginning, a quick text that said, "Just popping by," sent approximately 4 minutes before she appeared at the door. Then she stopped even doing that. Then she got the key. The key happened the winter after our daughter was born. My husband offered it to her while I was still in the hospital, still stitched up, still on iron supplements, and running on 3 hours of sleep. She needed it for emergencies, he said. She was going to help with the baby. I nodded because I had no bandwidth to do anything else, and I told myself I was being ungrateful. She drove 40 minutes each way from her place in Burlington. She was trying to help. That's what I told myself. What I didn't tell myself, what I couldn't let myself think yet, was that she was also watching. The first few months, the drop-ins felt almost manageable. She'd show up around 9, hold the baby while I showered, fold a load of laundry. I'd come downstairs to find her reorganizing my Tupperware drawer. I'd say thank you, because what else do you say? She'd smile in this particular way she has, lips pressed together, tilted slightly, the smile of someone performing patience, and say, "It's just easier this way." Easier for who, I learned not to ask. By the time our daughter was 8 months old, the visits had a rhythm. Tuesdays and Thursdays, reliable as garbage day. Sometimes Saturdays. Occasionally a Sunday, which she framed as just being in the area, even though Burlington is not anywhere near Mississauga unless you intend to be. She had opinions about everything. The formula I switched to when breastfeeding stopped working, the type of car seat cover I'd chosen, the fact that I'd gone back to work at 14 weeks because we had a mortgage and a line of credit, and the mat leave top-up from my employer ran out. That one she never said outright. She just asked softly whether I'd considered the research on attachment in the first year. I told her I'd read it. She nodded slowly, the way people do when they think you're lying. My husband is a kind man. That's important to say because it's true and because it makes everything more complicated. He is not malicious. He is not indifferent. He loves me. He also loves his mother with a particular devotion that I came to understand was less about affection and more about decades of conditioning. She is the kind of woman who keeps score in a language no one else can read, and he grew up learning that the only way to keep peace was to make himself agreeable. So when she'd say something that landed wrong, he'd look at me after she left and say, "She doesn't mean it like that." And I'd say, "I know." And neither of us was being entirely honest. The texting started sometime in late spring of that first year. I only found out by accident. My husband left his phone on the counter while he was in the shower, and a notification came through from his mother. The preview showed enough, a photo of our kitchen. Our kitchen, taken from the angle of someone standing near the island, and underneath it she'd written, "This is what I walked into today. I'm worried." The photo was of a pot on the stove, a baby monitor on the counter, a jacket draped over a chair. Normal. Tuesday morning, normal. Nothing dangerous, nothing neglectful, just life. I put the phone face down and didn't say anything that night. I needed to understand what I was dealing with first. Over the next few weeks, I paid attention differently. I started noticing what she looked at when she came in, the way her eyes moved, cataloging, how she'd mention things in conversation that she could only know if she'd been looking closely. I noticed the car seat base wasn't tightened properly last week. Things she'd observed and filed away. She wasn't just visiting, she was documenting. And then came the dinner. It was a Saturday in July. We'd been at my brother-in-law's place in Oakville, his wife, their 2 kids, my father-in-law, an aunt who'd driven up from Hamilton. 11 people around a table in the backyard, and it should have been fine. It was fine, mostly, until dessert. My mother-in-law cleared her throat. She does this thing where she makes a small sound right before she speaks that works like a signal flare. Everyone at the table orients toward her without knowing why. "I've been thinking," she said, which is never a sentence that ends well, "about little Poppy, our daughter, 14 months old, currently asleep upstairs in a borrowed pack and play. I know everyone's busy," she continued, "and I know Lily has a lot on her plate with work." She paused just long enough. "I just want to make sure we're all thinking about what's best for Poppy right now, as a family." My father-in-law looked at his plate. My brother-in-law's wife looked at me. The aunt kept eating, bless her. My mother-in-law reached into her bag, that same Loblaws bag she always carries, and took out her phone. She turned it to show the table. Photos. 8 or 10 of them, swiping through slowly. The kitchen with dishes in the sink. A laundry basket at the bottom of the stairs. Poppy's stroller folded against the wall in the hallway, which was apparently evidence of something. One photo of the inside of our fridge, which I still don't understand how she got without me noticing. "I'm not trying to make anyone feel bad," she said. "I just think, as her grandmother, I have a responsibility to speak up. If Poppy were spending more time in a stable environment, she's in a stable environment," I said. My voice came out very calm. I was surprised by that. "Lily, sweetheart, no one is attacking you." I didn't say anyone was. The table had gone quiet in that particular way that means everyone is trying to become furniture. My husband put his hand on my knee under the table. I couldn't tell if it was support or a request for me to stop. My mother-in-law looked at me with an expression I can only describe as practiced concern. Then she said, "I just think sometimes when we're overwhelmed, we can't always see it ourselves." I excused myself. I went inside, went upstairs, checked on Poppy, stood in the dark next to her pack and play, and breathed for a while. Then I went back downstairs, got myself a glass of water, and came back to the table. I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I sat back down and I was very, very quiet for the rest of the evening. But I had understood, finally, what was happening. This wasn't a woman who worried about her granddaughter. This was a woman who had decided, quietly and methodically, that she had a claim on my life that superseded mine. And she was building a case, slowly, carefully, the way you'd prepare something you intended to use. That night, driving home, my husband said his mother meant well. I said I knew. He said she just got anxious sometimes. I said I knew that too. And then I didn't say anything else for the rest of the drive because I had started planning. The next morning, I called our family doctor and made an appointment for Poppy. A wellness check, even though her next scheduled one wasn't for 2 months. I asked Dr. Okafor detailed questions and I asked her to put her responses in writing. I said I just wanted to have documentation for my own records. She looked at me with the particular look of a physician who's seen this before and said, "Of course. I'll note everything in the file and print you a summary." After that, I went to a Home Depot in Brampton and bought a Yale smart lock and 2 small security cameras, the kind that are clearly visible, not hidden. I installed them myself while my husband was at work and Poppy was napping. One on the front door, angled to catch the entryway. One in the kitchen, pointed at the main living space. I told my husband that evening. I said I'd been wanting to do it for a while, that I'd read about package theft in the neighborhood. He said sure, good idea, and went back to his laptop. I also made an appointment with a family lawyer on Bloor Street. I didn't tell my husband about that part yet. I just needed to understand what my options looked like. I needed to know what the word custody actually meant when someone used it as a threat, even a soft, plausibly deniable one. The lawyer was calm and practical, and she explained that what my mother-in-law had done at that dinner, the photos, the language about stable environment, likely amounted to nothing legally unless there was actual evidence of neglect, which there wasn't and never had been. But she also said, keep your documentation, because the only reason someone builds a case is because they intend to use it. I kept my documentation. And then I called my mother-in-law. I used my warmest voice, the one I use in client calls when I'm managing a difficult stakeholder. "I'd love to have you over," I said. "Just the two of us while Poppy's at daycare. We haven't really talked in a while." She was pleased. I could hear it. She said that sounded lovely and she'd come Thursday morning. Thursday morning at 8:55, I heard her car in the driveway. I watched through the front window as she walked up the front path, reached into her purse for the key, the little brass one she'd had for 3 years, and inserted it into the lock. The new lock beeped once. Red light. Access denied. A pause. She tried again. Red light. The doorbell rang. I opened the door, smiling. "Oh, I forgot to mention. I switched out the lock. New smart system. You need a code or the app." I stepped back. "Come in." She came in. Her eyes moved immediately to the camera above the entryway, then to the kitchen, where the second one was visible on the shelf. Her jaw tightened slightly, just slightly. She is very good at composure. "Tea?" I asked. We sat at the kitchen table, and I poured 2 cups of red rose from the pot I'd already made, and I let her settle in, and then I said, "I actually wanted to talk to you about the dinner at Ryan and Suzanne's." She started to speak. I let her have 2 sentences, something about concern and family, and then I opened my laptop, which was already on the table, and I turned it to face her. The security footage was queued up. I'd edit it into a short file. Her coming in on a Tuesday 3 weeks ago while I was in a video call upstairs, opening the fridge, taking out her phone and photographing the contents, moving to the counter, picking up an envelope that had come in the mail, my mail, addressed to me, opening the flap and looking inside, then putting it back. I let it play. The room was quiet enough that I could hear the furnace kick on. "You opened my mail," I said. "That's a federal offense in Canada, Section 356 of the Criminal Code." She looked at me, not with the practiced concern expression, with something I hadn't seen from her before, which was the look of someone who has been outmaneuvered and knows it. "I was worried about—" "I know what you were worried about," I said. "You were worried I wasn't good enough. And you've been collecting evidence for a long time to try to prove it." She said nothing. I slid a folder across the table. Poppy's last 3 well-child visit summaries. A letter from Dr. Okafor confirming healthy development, warm parental involvement, no concerns. A letter from my employer confirming a flexible work arrangement, remote Tuesdays and Thursdays, no travel requirements. At the back, a printout of the smart lock log, time-stamped entries for every time her key had been used, dates going back 8 months, 41 entries. I had counted. 41 times, I said, not all when we were home. She looked at the printout. Something moved across her face that I don't have a precise word for. It wasn't guilt exactly. It was closer to recalibration. "I want you to know I'm not trying to take anything from you," I said. "You're Poppy's grandmother. That matters to her and it matters to us. But this," I gestured at the laptop screen, still paused on her standing at my counter with my mail in her hands. "This ends today." I had told my husband to come home at 9:30. I texted him the night before, "I need you here Thursday morning. Please don't be late." He'd texted back a question mark and I'd written, "Trust me." He came in through the front door, which now required his code, and he stepped into the kitchen and saw his mother sitting across from me, the laptop open between us. Her hands folded on the table like a woman at a meeting she did not expect to attend. He looked at the screen, he looked at the folder, he looked at me. "Sit down," I said gently. "I want to show you something." I walked him through it, the footage, the log, the 41 entries, the opened mail, the photos sent to his phone. I had pulled those too. I'd screenshotted the notification I'd seen months ago, and a few others he'd mentioned in passing, the ones he'd thought were his mother just keeping him informed. He was quiet for a long time. His mother tried twice to say something, and both times he held up a hand, not angrily, just, "Wait." When I was done, he closed the laptop. He turned to his mother. Mom. His voice was measured. You went into our house without telling us 41 times. I was checking on 41 times without telling us. He said it again, not louder, just clearer. You opened Lily's mail. I was concerned about finances. I thought, that's a crime. He said it the way you'd state a fact about the weather, flat, definitive. And you sat at Ryan's table and showed our family photos of Lily's house and talked about Poppy's environment. She tried the concerned grandmother expression. I only ever wanted what was best. I know you think that, he said, but what you did was try to make my wife look unfit in front of our family, with photos you took in our house without permission. He paused. I need you to understand that I see that now. She went very still. I reached into the folder one more time and took out the last document, a formal notice. Not a legal filing, but a written record I'd had the lawyer help me draft. It stated that the key had been deactivated, that all future visits required 48 hours notice by phone or text, that entry without prior arrangement would be treated as trespass, and that any further attempts to contact legal or social services regarding our family situation without documented cause would be responded to accordingly. I slid it across the table. I'd like you to read that, I said, and if you have questions, we can talk about them. But I need you to sign the bottom, just to confirm you've received it. For a moment, I thought she was going to stand up and leave. She looked at the document and then at me, and then at her son, and something in her face broke open just slightly, not into tears, but into something more honest than anything I'd seen from her in 4 years. She picked up the pen. She signed it. My husband walked her to the door. I stayed in the kitchen and listened to their voices in the front hall, low and serious. I heard him say something I couldn't make out. I heard her say, I only wanted to help. I heard him say, I know, Mom, but there's a difference between helping and controlling, and I think you know that too. The door closed. He came back into the kitchen and stood in the doorway for a moment. He looked tired. He also looked like someone who had just finished carrying something heavy that he hadn't noticed was heavy until he put it down. Why didn't you tell me earlier? He asked. It was a fair question, and I'd thought about how to answer it. Because I needed you to see it, I said. Not hear me describe it. See it. He nodded slowly. Then he pulled out a chair and sat down, and we stayed there at the kitchen table for a long time. Not talking much, just sitting in a house that had been ours all along. His mother still comes by. The visits are scheduled now, Sunday afternoons usually, and she texts the day before. She plays with Poppy on the living room floor and stays for 2 hours and says goodbye at the door like a guest. She has not mentioned the dinner. She has not mentioned the mail. She has not asked about the cameras, which are still there. We haven't taken them down. There's a word in English that I kept coming back to in the months after all of this. One of those words that seems simple but carries a lot underneath it. The word is home. Not the building. Not the mortgage and the property taxes and the hydro bill. The feeling that a place belongs to you in the way that matters, that you can stand in your own kitchen at 7:40 in the morning, barefoot, and not be waiting to be assessed. I have that now, finally, and I didn't have to scream to get it.